So let's go. Make sure we're recording. Perfect. Okay. Actually, I'm just going to take a quick drink first. It's been a long
Oh, that's a
day.
good idea.
Yeah. What time is it for you, Laura?
It's 11 a.m.
It's just gone 7 p.m. here.
Yeah. You're in Ireland?
Yep, I sure am in Tipperary. As I say,
Oh,
like the song, it's a long way to
like the
Tipperary.
song. I know. That's why I was laughing. That's
Yeah.
it. I love it. I love it.
Okay. So I'll just clap so I know where to cut it. Hey, 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 guys, and welcome to another episode of Life After Life with me, Sandie Byrne. So, in this episode, I have a guest all the way from Vancouver in Canada, way over on the west coast, so the complete opposite side. You couldn't get any further away from me, Laura. Her name is Laura Hoorweg, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And
That's
she
correct.
is a psychic medium, but also a spiritual counselor and intuitive coach. So, Laura, welcome to the Life After Life podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel the Tipperary energy coming through.
Yes. It's all that mystical Irish energy, isn't it? Okay, so look, if it's okay with you, Laura, I do like to start the podcast by asking my guests about their background, okay? Because I want people to see that we weren't all born straight out of the womb reading spirit, that we did have a normal life, and how you got into holistic work. Is it okay if I ask you that question?
Absolutely. I
So,
come from a totally different background. I started out in my career. I was in advertising and marketing for many, many years, 25, 30 years. And I actually didn't get into my spiritual counseling practice and my intuitive coaching practice until about 10 years ago. And it was after the sudden death of my partner, and that just changed everything in my life. And I went through a big healing journey, and and then I entered into my practice. I've always been very intuitive, and I've always had my psychic abilities, but I had never kind of gone into the mediumship side. But what I really do is I use my gifts and I use my experience in my spiritual counseling practice, and my intuitive mentoring is probably a better word than coaching.
yeah, mentoring. I love it. So let's come to that in a minute. But I did see about you that you started your spiritual journey at the tender age of 11. So yes, I totally get that the trauma of your partner's loss was a huge thing. But this seems, the spiritual side of you seems to go back further. Can you tell us a little bit
Mhm.
about that? And just before, and I will let you talk, I promise. But I would lay money that even though you say that your spiritual journey started at the age of 11, that it started before then, but you probably just realized that not everybody was the same when you were 11. Would I be correct?
Yes,
Yes.
that would be correct. I assume that everybody had abilities, everybody heard things, everybody saw things, everything. Uh, Everybody felt things in a different way, but I didn't really realize that when I was a child because I thought it was just a normal thing. But when I was 11, around 10 or 11, somewhere in there, I decided that I wanted to find God and the angels. And I came from a family that wasn't religious, wasn't spiritual at all. And so I decided that I was going to find them on my own. So I happened to be living in an area around Toronto at that time, where there was a lot of churches around my neighborhood. There was like half a dozen at least. So I decided, because I was told that's where, God lived.
Yep.
So I actually went to probably at least a half a dozen, Catholic church or an Anglican church, a Methodist church. I think I went to a Baptist church. I went to the Salvation Army church. And I met lots of lovely people, and I had varying experiences in each one of those buildings. But I realized that that's not where God was, and that's not where I was going to find the angels. Some people do,
Hmm.
but where I found them. what I did realize several years later, when I was started getting into my early and mid teens, I got into a lot of outdoor wilderness activities, backpacking and hiking and canoe tripping. And what I realized was that I found my cathedral, my church, was the outdoors. And that's where I really made my connection, was through nature. I made my connection to source, to God, to that energy, whatever you particularly want to call it. I don't really care, and they don't either. So
Exactly.
that's kind of where. And then when I was 15, I had an out of body experience out in nature, which was quite incredible, and that changed my mind about how the world worked entirely.
Wow. Can you tell us about that? What was your out of body experience like? Because that's so interesting.
Everybody loves this story, and I love this
Yeah.
story. I've been trying to recreate this experience since it happened. I was definitely 15. I was at camp. I was at a summer camp, and I was out rock climbing and rappelling with a group of people. And we were getting ready to rappel down the cliff, and I was standing on the top of the cliff. And you have to realize this was out in God's country. This was out in the wilderness in a big provincial park in northern Ontario, and there was nothing but lakes and trees and rivers and nature, and it was just this beautiful scene in front of me. And all of a sudden, I felt my entire being, my energy, everything that I would call me, just rocket out of my body. And all of a sudden, I found myself up in the sky, looking down on my friends, on this beautiful nature that stretched for miles and miles and miles. And I was like, wow. And there was like no fear. There was no trepidation whatsoever. There was just a sense of peace and awe. Actually, the closest I've come to hearing a similar situation is when I've been listening to some near death experiences. It was kind of that same kind of energy, that same feeling. And I thought, wow. And just as I was kind of getting used to where I was, all of a sudden that same feeling, that rush, that rocketing energy came again. And all of a sudden I found myself above the earth, looking down onto the earth. Okay. And I was like,
Wow.
wow, because it was just like the astronauts described, of how your whole perspective changes when you look at down on the earth. And I was just in pure awe and wonder. And again, I was just looking and what was happening, and I felt totally peaceful and connected to everything. Like I just felt so expanded. I just felt infinite in terms of space. And then all of a sudden it happened again. And all of a sudden this great big rush of energy. Yes, I know. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I rushed even higher. And all of a sudden I found myself not only outside of our solar system, but actually out in the open universe, because I could see actual other spiral galaxies, spiral universes around me. And I was just like, now I'm just like totally blown away. And I'm just looking and observing, and I was just getting really into it. And all of a sudden it was like a great big hand reached out and grabbed me and just yanked me back in my body. It was a and it happened like within a split second. And it just like, it was like it forced me back in my body. And I felt like I was being crammed into a very small space. And it actually took me several days to reacclimatize and get used to being in my body. And what I found out after I kind of came to, in that sense, was that one of the instructors that was with us had gotten concerned that I was too close to the edge of the cliff. And he had actually grabbed the back of my pants and yanked me
Right.
back from the edge of the cliff. And that's what had caused me for my essence to go back into my body. So it was a very profound experience, and totally self-generated. I believe it was generated by that connection that I had, that I spoke about earlier, of nature, and how profound that connection was for me, and just being in that awe and beauty of that wild nature. And that's what, because it certainly wasn't prompted by anything else. So that had to be that connection.
Oh, it 100% had to because yes, and I know that when you describe it, it's likening it to maybe a near death experience or whatever. But I think sometimes when you raise your vibration, which obviously nature does to you, that you raised yourself maybe out of your body. And, you know, I read a book years ago, I have it still here somewhere, by D. Scott Rogo. I don't know if you've ever heard or read any of his works, but about astral traveling and how we can train ourselves to astral travel, which would be, you know, a similar thing. I've never managed to do it. I'm not sure it's something that I would be looking for at the moment, but maybe at some stage in the future. So like that was powerful, and at 15 years old, that must have been, you know, so confusing for you as well. You know, just doing that. And I think the other thing, just even listening to you talking, I don't know if this resonates with you, but you've probably found out since, I mean, I had 13 years of Catholic school education. So a church isn't a building. Okay, so a church is a communion of people. It's the people that are the church. So it doesn't matter if you're in this ornate building, it's if you're together. And, you know, there's a huge crossover between spirituality and religion. And, you know, when people come together like a spirit circle or something, you know, you're generating that same energy, you know, and when we do it together, like anything is possible, really, isn't it? You know, we call them seances, but it's really a church, and it's really, you know, kind of bringing your energy up together. So I love that. And I should say that I'm really sorry about the loss of your partner. And, you know, I've met a lot of people, as I'm sure you have over the years, and so many people describe their entrance into holistic work, if you like, as being triggered by some trauma in their lives, whether it's the loss of somebody close to them, maybe being made redundant in their job, you know, a relationship breakdown, but there's some trauma that has catapulted people back, you know, to their spirituality, you know, and that seems to be kind of similar to what happened to you. So tell me, it's a big leap, okay, from age 15, age 11, age 15, then you grow up and you know, you settle down with somebody, and then you lose that person. So like we have life in between. But what was the trigger into holistic work? Okay, you lost your partner, you know, you felt more drawn back to it, but when did that happen?
That would have been about, well, because Tim died in 2014, so that was about literally 10 years ago. And then I went on, what actually triggered me too was that then I went on a healing journey, and I did a lot of alternative things, which are pretty wild things. I spent about 6 weeks in Brazil at John of God, which is he's a trance channeler healer, and he trance channels a lot of different entities from the other side. And I spent 6 weeks there. And then I was led from there to go on an ayahuasca journey, plant medicine journey in Peru. So then I was in Peru for ayahuasca intensive in the middle of the Amazon jungle for
That's
about
the drink,
3 weeks.
isn't it?
It is the drink. It's a plant medicine. Yeah, it's definitely it definitely is a hallucinogenic, but it's not recreational because nobody would ever do it on a recreational basis because well, let's just put it mildly. You spend a bunch of hours vomiting and having profuse diarrhea during the purging stage. Not everybody experiences it, but most people experience at least one, if not, I experience both at the same time. And the journey starts about as soon as the sun goes down. So it's about 8, usually lasts for about 4 hours, depending on the person. But I discovered that I was super sensitive. I should have known because I am super sensitive to any kind of medication or drugs or anything like that. So the first little dose that they gave me, which they kind of start with sort of everybody was, you know, it's supposed to last about 4 hours. Well, my journey lasted about 12 hours because I was on that plateau from about 8 o'clock at night till about 8 o'clock the next morning. So that was pretty profound. Now I did that journey several times over the actually multiple times, more than that.
Even
actually,
after that
first
experience.
Oh yes. I had actually probably my most profound experience was because every experience was different. It doesn't matter how many times you've done it, every experience is quite different. But I think the most meaningful one to me was the one where I actually met ayahuasca, the goddess ayahuasca. And she shows herself in two forms. One is kind of like the old crone, and one is the snake, the massive boa. It's like a huge, massive boa constrictor, which of course was the one that I met, which
Of
was
course.
kind of like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But she took me on a shamanic journey through the underworld, and that was quite the experience. So again, that changed that cut. I had some interest, and I did have some knowledge about shamanism in general, but that was also what really kind of kicked me into shamanism. And I find it interesting because shamanism is an indigenous belief system and energy through all indigenous cultures throughout the world, and it is very much an earth-based an earth-based energy and belief system. So not only do I have my attachment to above, that gave me my attachment to below, and it kind of brought those two things very much together. So that was quite interesting. um, and I really got into my yoga practice too. I'm also a yogi, and that was another part of my journey because I ended up going to Costa Rica for a month-long intensive to get my yoga certification. And that was not just about yoga; that was about a lot of other things besides yoga. But again, an extremely intense experience because basically you're doing yoga for 8 to 10 hours a day, and again, we're talking about being in Costa Rica in the jungle and yada yada yada. So again, the nature component. So it was an interesting journey. And then after I came back from the yoga journey, I came back, and that at that point, I wanted to return Tim's ashes to Hawaii because he lived in Hawaii for about 20 years, and he Hawaii was his place. So then I went to Hawaii to do as ashes, and I also participated in yoga retreat, a yoga festival slash retreat when I was there too. So it was an interesting time.
That
It's
would
kind of like boom,
definitely.
boom, boom. Each journey travel was very short. There was a very short distance between all of them, so it was quite the ride.
It sounds like you were trying to find yourself, find this person for this next part of your journey. And, this is something that I've been talking a lot about recently with people, that you can't raise your vibration enough to connect with spirit if you're not in control of your own energy. And it sounds like that,
Absolutely.
you really, used this experience to take control. Now, I'm not sure the plant drink in South America would suit me. I don't even drink alcohol because I don't like the feeling of not being in control of my own body. So I definitely wouldn't do that. But like everything else, and I'm definitely sitting here thinking I haven't traveled enough. I meet so many people that say they went to India for this or they went to Costa Rica for this. And I'm thinking, I definitely need to travel more.
Well, honestly, it's not necessary, but it is, I think, for me especially, and I think for a lot of other people. I think the whole connection, being out, taking ourselves out of our normal lives and getting out into nature, however you choose to do that, like there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. And I know when I was young, this was another part of after that experience on the cliff when I was 15. I actually worked for the YMCA, and I was a canoe tripper, and I was working with inner city kids, taking them out on canoe trips, and that was part of their healing journey. So I got to see firsthand, not only for myself but for others, how healing that experience can be. Because all those kids who came from very troubled homes and very challenging circumstances and lived most of their lives in the heart of a city, never had the opportunity to be out in nature and do camping and canoe tripping and learning all those skills and being in that energy. And it was some of the changes and some of the healings that some of these kids went through was just amazing, you know. And then I also got a chance to do a canoe trip with a bunch of adults from, well, at the time, I would have been, what would I have been? I would have been 18, I think. Yeah, 18, 19, something like that. And these young people that came from Europe, I call them young people now. They were actually older than me at the time because they were all basically, I would say they were basically between 25 and 35. But it was really interesting when you got them out in nature again, because most of these people had never, coming from Europe, they had never had a wilderness experience. And, they were significantly older than I was, and they seemed like children to me. When you got them out, you got them out in the wilderness, it's like, oh my God, these kids, these people are as bad as the kids, in terms of, maturity and how they handled situations. And it was a big learning experience for me, finding out that age wasn't necessarily a determiner of maturity.
Oh, you just have to look at grown men playing soccer to see that.
Yes,
If
exactly.
you watch 7-year-old boys playing soccer and 27-year-old men, there's no difference.
There's no difference. Exactly.
No. So you had a great background then, having worked with young people and adults, to give you a basis. So, we can talk about the psychic medium, but my listeners will be very familiar with all psychic work and medium work because we talk about it a lot. But the whole kind of spiritual counselor or spiritual mentor, the intuitive coach side, I want to talk about that for a little bit, if that's okay, because it's so interesting to me. And, probably some of what I do in the psychic readings as well, but probably not. Can you tell us about it? Okay, what's the difference between spiritual counselling and a psychic reading?
Well, the difference is that I'm using those gifts to really help people get clarity and direction in their life. And not only that, but really it's about spirit going in and seeing what is necessary, what the root problems are. So I'm using my psychic skills. I'm using energy. I read energy. I talk about reading energy, and everything is energy. And that way, I use a combination of those gifts and my life experience and all the experiences that I've gone through in terms of personal growth, because I've done a lot of personal growth work in my life. And I kind of combine them all together and help people to deal with their own issues. And I don't know, but I think one of the biggest things one of the biggest talents I have is helping people to find their authentic selves and see clearly where they're headed and where they want to go, and how to use the gifts that they already have, whether they be intuitive gifts or their strengths as a person and their own life experience. And I have a lot of life experience. I've been on the earth for almost 63 years. So I have a little bit of life experience to pass on. And I've lived a very challenging life. And, I had a very challenging childhood. It continued into my young adulthood, and it just keeps on going. It keeps on going. So, and I think that's really helpful for people, because there's a very different thing when you can actually look somebody in the eye and say, I know exactly how you feel because I've been there. Okay. There's a very different energy between that and somebody who's relying on book learning or education, or simple experience that hasn't actually experienced those particular things. So I've experienced a lot of things in my life. So I can really help people relate to that. And I can also give them down to earth. I always say I'm the most grounded woo-woo person that I've ever met. Okay. Because I'm very practical, and I'm very spiritual, and I can go way out there on the woo-woo side. But it's really about making things work in your day-to-day life. Because I've always said that that's one of the problems with organized religion. Okay. Is the problem is they seem to be unable to give people tools that worked in their day-to-day life. Okay. And if your spirituality, whatever that happens to be, I always say if your spirituality isn't serving you in your day-to-day life, then what good is it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Because my idea is that those things are there to help us. And the most important thing that spirits always said to me is that they're not there for us to depend on them. They're there to help us to develop our own wisdom, our own intuition, and to follow our own guidance. So they don't want us to become dependent on them. They are just there. A big part of why they're there is to give us confirmation, because a lot of times we don't believe our own intuition. Okay. We'll chalk it up to, wishful thinking, or, oh, that's just a coincidence, or it was an accident, and I don't believe in those things, because I believe that everything is synchronicity. So it's a very different, and, I have to say this, and I get in trouble sometimes for saying things like this, but that's me. I say it as it is. There's a lot of people out there doing readings, and I don't care whether it's psychic readings or card readings or whatever. And there's kind of an energy of entertainment to it. Okay. Entertainment, there's a lot of tendency often for people to leave things out that they think people won't relate to, or, sugarcoat things and all that kind of thing. My guides and me don't go there. Okay. I
I hear
consider
you.
myself a channel. And if I'm not, I relate exactly what I'm getting. And, I'm not mean or nasty or anything like that. But, I don't see the point in telling people what they want to hear, because that doesn't help anybody. Telling somebody what they want to hear is not going to help them make their life better.
I
So
agree.
that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes I have to deliver very difficult news to people, and I've gotten better at doing it. And I will call people. There's an expression here in Canada. I call people on their shit.
Mm-hmm.
you know
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
often we try to fool ourselves, and we're in denial, and we make up all these excuses and all that kind of thing. And it's just like, I can see right away whether somebody is trying to fool themselves, or cover up, or be in denial. And I'll call them on it, because otherwise, why are you here? Like, why are you seeking help if you don't want to actually really get the help? That's what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. No, I totally get it, and I would be of a similar mindset. You know, um, if I don't see something, if I do see something, I'm going to say it to you, okay? Because that's what you asked for. You wanted the
Yes,
truth, you wanted it.
exactly.
You
That's what
know,
you're paying for. That's why you're here.
yeah,
And the big thing is, to me, is really giving people tools. I like to fill up people's toolkits, okay? Because there's a lot of things that we can do to help aid us in our day-to-day lives. There's a lot of things that we can do to help us build that spiritual connection to ourselves and to our guides and our angels, whatever you want to call them. They don't care. I know you know this, but they don't care. Like, people always ask me, what are the names? And, can you identify all my guides and angels? And I'm going, they don't care. What they care about is you connecting to them. You can call them Bob, Sally, and Sue for all they care. What they care about is that you're actually actively trying to deepen that connection with them, because that's when they can help you.
yeah. Well, the way I describe it, and I would agree with you 120%. And when people say it to me, I say, well, you didn't know the names and personal lives of your teachers when you were at school. You don't need to know the names and personal lives of your guides. You just learn from them. And that's what they're meant to do. They're supposed to teach you, you know,
Exactly,
and
exactly.
it's the same idea.
Well, I just want to
So,
say one thing
yeah,
too
sure.
about the mediumship side, because I know you're a medium too.
Yeah.
But there's many different kinds of mediums. Okay, the mediumship work that I do, I'm not an evidentiary medium. I'm not there to prove to you that there's life on the other side, and I can sit there and spew a whole pile of details. That's not my mediumship work. My mediumship
Okay.
work is tied into my spiritual counseling, in the sense that my major job with mediumship is to help people move through grief, help them to find healing. Yes, and to help them know that life goes on past this body. But my major part when it comes to mediumship is delivering those messages from the other side, because they're healing and they're growth messages for the people from their loved ones. And that's my major thing when I sort of dive into the mediumship side.
I get it. Okay. So I think I get it more now. I was asking about the spiritual counseling. We would call that spiritual assessments over at this side of the Atlantic. And it seems, yeah,
Okay.
it's the same thing. Yeah, it's the same thing, but that's what we would call it. So, I mean, I just want to ask you, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but so would you tell somebody? So if, like, people are often saying to me, you know, oh, I've been told that I'm a psychic, I've been told that I'm a healer and stuff. So do people come to you to find out what path they should be taking in life? Yeah.
Yes. But my guides have always underscored that there's healer, teacher, mystic. There's a range of general paths. Okay. And each of us, I can help people determine which of those general paths they are. But it's always been emphasized to me that how you like, there's so many people are healers. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a good example, but how you choose to be a healer is really your free choice, and it's your creativity, how you want to use that energy. Now, I can help people because I can look at their energy and I can say, okay, you probably, for example, you might be someone that leans towards energy healing or body work or something like that. But I also consider myself a healer, and I'm a psychic medium. So there's all different. And you know what? I also know realtors who are healers.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know, I always use this example because you know, lawyers and realtors tend to, I don't know, across the pond, but here they tend to have a bit of a bad reputation.
All
Okay.
right. Okay.
So um you know, so I always use that example because the way that I have seen realtors, I have friends and I also have a lot of clients who happen to be realtors, which is why I use this example. Their method, their MO in terms of their healing work is finding the perfect space for an individual or a family that's going to support their growth and their healing and their way in the world. So this is the way they, you know, perceive their healing efforts. And that's totally true because the house you're in, the city you're in, even the country you're in, it's all about the energetics because each individual has their own energetic pattern, and it's whether it harmonizes with where you live. And you can look at it in all those different levels, whether it's the house level, the city level, the, you know, even the state or the province, or even the country, and whether those two are harmonic or not really has a huge impact on how physically healthy you are, how mentally, emotionally, and spiritually healthy and happy you are. So it's a big deal.
It is. And I just want to say very quickly for those who might be listening that haven't seen enough, you know, Canadian or American television. A realtor is an estate agent. Okay, so
Oh,
they would help you find the perfect home for yourself. And like, I love your way of looking at it. You know, I never
yeah.
thought of it like that before, but you know, I just think, okay, well, they're just trying to sell a house, you know. But it's true, they're
Well,
trying to find.
there are some people like that. Okay, I'm not saying that every estate agent is not a healer. Okay, but there definitely are some that are, and I use that example because people always assume to be a healer or to be spiritual that they have to have a job like us, or they have to be a body worker, or they have to be an energy healer, or they have to be a card reader. You know, people have very blinders on in terms of what is spiritual work. And I just feel like part of my job, part of my mission is to show people that you can be spiritual, you can be doing spiritual work, and you can be doing any job. It's really the intent and what kind of energy that you put into that job whether it's spiritual or not, you know.
So true.
Some teachers, a lot of teachers are doing incredible. I'm talking about like in school, teaching
Yeah.
children. They're doing an incredible spiritual work because they're helping to form these young minds. They're helping them to find their own path. They're helping them to find their self-confidence and their own connection to themselves. Now, if that isn't spiritual work, I don't know what is, you know? So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I'm sitting here and I'm thinking of my own poor personal trainer. I'm going to tell him on Monday that he's a healer because he has listened to me so much moaning over the last, I don't know how long. And, even this morning when I was like, I can't lift this weight, and he's got, you can do this, you've got it. And he's
Yeah.
so encouraging. He's actually a healer,
He
I'm going to
is.
tell him he should charge me more.
Well, I'm not sure if I'd say that, but yeah.
Oh, stop. And I love your perspective on it. And, I really appreciate it because I never looked at it like that before. But I definitely will be looking at, should we call them service providers? But anybody, that
Yes.
I come into contact with because, like, I'm contacting them for some reason, generally because we want something for them, right? So, like, everybody in their own way is working spiritually. I love that. Oh my God, that's a writer downer for me. I'm going to keep it.
Okay, I'm glad.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So, just very quickly. So, I know people can contact you at any time, throughout their lives. But do you find that people tend to, connect with you like after traumatic events, or maybe when they hit a milestone birthday, 40, 50, 60, or something like this?
Well, there's certain key things, but they happen at different times for different people. But I deal with a lot of people in different veins. Okay, the first vein I would say is people going through major shifts and changes in their life. Now, that can happen at any time.
Yeah.
Okay, sometimes it's after divorce or separation, sometimes it's somebody doing a major career change, sometimes people have had major illnesses and all these are catalysts for making big changes in your life. So that's one kind of group of people. The other kind of group of people is the ones that you were just talking about, people that have had gone through like major traumas too, like something is happening, like they've lost someone, or what else. Well, sometimes divorce and things like that sort of comes under that
Sure.
heading as well. And then there's other people who are simply wanting to, self empowerment. People who have discovered that, they want to be more empowered in their life, and they've realized that they've always kind of been sitting in the back seat. They want to become the driver of their life instead of a mere passenger. And then there's another group who want to concentrate on either discovering and developing, or discovering their own gifts, and how they can work that into their life. And sometimes it's a full-on change. They want to actually start working in some spiritual thing, or it's simply to make their lives better, to make their lives more holistic. And I think that's happening hugely right now. And there's so much talk about awakening. So I see people at all different levels of what I would describe as awakening. Some people who are just starting, some people who are maybe in the middle of the process, and some people who are more towards the end, because there's always reasons to want to get more clarity, find your direction, maybe shift directions. People are looking for confirmation a lot of times. They have a feeling that they should really be doing something, or moving, or, seeking out a new skill or something like that. And they just want confirmation of that. So there's a lot of different, I will say that I predominantly deal with women.
Okay.
Okay. That has a function of just the way men think. But I will say I've been in this spiritual thing quite a few decades now, and I'm seeing more and more men, open up to the spiritual side and the intuitive side of them. And I'm also seeing a lovely trend, which is young men who are actually, it used to be the only men that you saw were older men, basically 50 plus, usually 60, often 60 and 70-year-old men was kind of the age group. But that age group has slid back. And also, which is really encouraging, is young men in their 20s and 30s. I'm seeing a lot of them. But still, I have some men that come to me independently, what I call independently, without a source, okay? Because usually men come through me through a significant woman. That's the way I put it. It's either a girlfriend, a wife, a sister, a mother, maybe an aunt, but they usually come through some significant female. But I do have men who come to me directly. So that has been increasing all the time. So I do feel very encouraged by that.
That's amazing. And I noticed the same trend, I have to say. It would have been something maybe when I was growing up, and that men would always say that that's a load of balderdash,
Yeah.
Don't be scammed out of your money. But
I've
now
heard
they're
worse
actually
than that. Yes.
Yeah. I know. I try to keep it clean. It's a family friendly
Yes.
show.
It's a family friendly show. Yes.
But so that's amazing. And obviously I have to ask, because I'm so far away and a lot of the audience listening would be so far away from you. You work online?
I do almost all. Predominantly, I work online. I have clients all over the world. I have some clients in Ireland. I have clients in all over the UK. Actually, some clients in Europe. I have quite a number of clients in Australia and New Zealand. Of course, all through Canada and all through the United States. But I honestly have clients all over the world now. So. I found something interesting, because I used to originally, when I started out, I used to do a combination of in person and online. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. Yes. And so the in-person thing went down the drain. And I actually started realizing that because people ask me this question all the time, is the energy the same as online as it is in person? And I used to say, oh yeah, it's the same. There's no problem. But I really realized that it's actually not the same. It's actually better online. And there's reasons for that. Okay. And one of them is I can control the energy of my personal space. So I am in the maximum energy of me when I'm in my own space. And then the client is in the comfort and the privacy of their own home. So they are also controlling their own energy. Not to mention the fact that we don't have, when you're working out of another place, a shop or another location, there's all kinds of energy interference, okay, and distractions. So it's actually much more powerful online. And now that I've been doing it and concentrating my efforts online, it's really, really much, much easier to tap into people, because it's really like sitting across the desk from somebody. So this outdated idea of, in person's better, it's really not true.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. I found the very same thing. I actually went online, way before the pandemic, and part of that was to do with my PTSD. I get very overwhelmed by people's energies, but I think anybody that's sensitive would definitely get overwhelmed by other people's energies. So being online allows me to read your energy without getting overwhelmed by it. And that's why I like the online, and I work predominantly online and have done for a long time. So I totally get what you're saying. So look, thank you so much for that insight. And it's made a lot of stuff clearer to me, even though I work as a psychic. I'm not too afraid with the whole spiritual assessment and all the rest of it. So it's really enlightened me as well. So look, Laura, if you're watching this on video, you will see Laura's website on screen. But if you're not on video, it's Spirit Speaks, then the number 2.me. Okay, Spirit Speaks to me, but it's the number 2 and then .me. But I will put the link to her website and any social links and anything else that Laura wants to share with you. Is there any particular page on your website or anything that, you know, you would encourage people to look at?
Well, have a look on my website, and the easiest way, I'm all over Facebook. You know, I have a personal page, personal / business page. I also have a Spirit Speaks to Me group that you can join as well. I'm also on Instagram, and it's backwards. It's Hoorweg Laura on Instagram. You know, I'm on LinkedIn. You know, we'll give you all that. I'm on the social media thing. But honestly, if you want to book a reading, the best thing to do is actually to email me. My email is just laurahorweg@gmail.com, and that's on my website as well. So you can pay through my website, and then just we can go through the booking. Just email me, and we'll do the booking.
Set a date. That's perfect. So I'll put all those links, email address, everything in the description box attached to this podcast. So Laura, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate the teaching as well, because it's definitely a benefit to all of us. So hopefully I might see you at some stage in the future again. We might even have you back on the Life After Life podcast, because I always find, and I always ask people if they have any other questions on the subject matter to send them in to me, and then if needs be I can ask that you come back to answer people's questions directly. Would that
that would be wonderful. I would, yeah, absolutely.
Great.
And you know, an hour goes by so quickly that it's never enough time.
No, it's not. And, you know, I would ask a certain amount of questions, but then other people would have other questions. So send me in any questions or comment on the podcast or my social medias or even Laura's social media, and we can get together and answer all those questions for you. So for now, guys, I will say goodbye, and I will see you in the next episode of Life After Life. So until then, take care and stay safe. Laura, thank you so much. My God, I learned so much, and I apologize that I kept you so long. It wasn't my intention. So I hope I haven't kept you from anything.
No. I put in a block of time, so because I know sometimes we can get
Yeah, and we're very similar people. So I definitely, you know, I definitely related to all of that. So look, this won't go live.